right, gentlemen, it's good to be back this time for our third and final set of these conversations for 2020 and our last time in this version of the Southside studio because you guys are moving.
Yes, we're moving. So we're packing up our stuff here. Jake's done an awesome job with that, and we're moving early January. And then we're excited to host, our community and our church family at some point in the new year. It's going to be awesome.
And I just noticed this light reflecting off Zach's face, bringing out different hues of red and
beautiful
white.
Hues.
This is amazing.
Can I take this thing back to my house for Zoom
You
calls?
can strap it onto
It's
the Xterra.
bringing out some beautiful
let's put
complexion
this thing
here.
on the Xterra, drive it home, and use it for Zoom calls. I think that's a great idea. What is this thing really for? What's this about?
Okay, so we are doing a light drive-through. So many things were getting canceled for Christmas. Stanley Park, all those Van Dusen got canceled. And so we really just wanted to bless our community. And really it's just an offering and a gift we're trying to give to our community to say, hey, there's something festive for you and your family to come do. Free date night, free night.
Free night?
To hang out.
Just a free night.
Just a free night of fun. Good, clean fun. And so December 19th to 23rd, 6 to 9 p.m. every night at our new building, entrance right by Vetter Middle School. That bad boy will be right by the road. You can't miss it.
It's actually interesting when we first showed up.
Yeah.
Like the cameras, you can't actually tell, but there is like construction
all around.
We did a really good job of hiding it.
We've positioned it in such a way that you could only actually see the candy cane. But when we first walked in and Lucas was sweating in shorts, it was a sight to be seen.
Seriously, people are working hard here. I kind of feel like I'm in Santa's workshop.
That's what I felt. It smelled like cedar.
The elves are taller than I thought. And far more muscular. But what can I say? Christmas is full of surprises.
It really is.
So one quick question before we move into our topic for this week, just another Christmassy one that's kind of fun. What's your favorite Christmas treat? Like either like a baked good or a beverage? What do you really look forward to eating around the Christmas season?
I have a weakness. And it's shrimp rings.
Shrimp
rings.
That is not festive.
Is
that festive?
I think it is. No joke. I bring it to every Christmas Eve party, and I'm the only one that eats it.
So you eat the entire ring.
And then as soon as you're out at earshot, people talk about you.
Exactly.
He brought shrimp rings again?
Dude, the shrimp ring guy? It's the shrimp ring guy.
Who invited shrimp ring guy?
He comes every year, eats his own gift, and then leaves.
Worst kind of guy.
Wow, do you use the dip?
Dude, of course, yeah. But I don't wait till they defrost, too. It's actually like, I love it so much that they're like frozen shrimps.
This keeps getting worse.
I know. I'm actually like regretting everything here. So I thought you guys would welcome me with loving arms, but it's not looking that way.
No, probably not at my Christmas party. If Christmas parties were allowed this year,
You're turning red of embarrassment, but I'm hoping it's just the candy cane reflecting.
It's just the candy cane hues. Yeah, okay. Lucas.
I mean, like ginger snap cookies, something actually festive.
He's got a point. Hear him out.
And then, hot chocolate. Carnations. And I need Zach Fleming to make it for me. He has the recipe.
Wow.
I need to get it from him.
By the recipe, you mean 2 tablespoons? That's
no. There's something different. No, I'm actually serious. Not 3. He does something different. I promise.
He heats the water up?
He's Mennonite.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
There's something in there.
We come from Mennonite Church. It's 2 teaspoons.
Yeah, no, we also...
Is it just 2 teaspoons?
2 teaspoons, heat up the water.
There
heat up
you
the
go.
water, that's probably the part
That
you're
was
missing.
the problem.
He didn't stir it. It was just so
What is
crunchy.
wrong with this? It's so cold.
Very thick and cold.
Well, guys, if we're just going to be honest, parts of this year have felt like ordering a hot chocolate and getting a cold one.
Yeah.
And I think as I talk to friends and ask, how are you doing? Honestly, even just at the gas station, I was picking up Gatorades for the team before we went live, and I asked the guy how he's doing, and he just looks at me. He's like, honestly, not good. And it's not often you hear that just kind of at the store, right? Usually everyone will say good, whether they are or not. And I think we're at a point in our society where we're willing to admit, I'm straight up not having a good time.
Would be like, hey, we're going to do something. And then we would find that funny or happy. And whereas now we're leading from an emotional place.
That's dangerous, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I feel sad. And it creates this cycle.
Right. And it dictates what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
And Brock, a little bit earlier, you were talking about the idea of the people around you, their mood really affecting yours. And this has been a season where, as other people have some pretty legitimate reasons for being down, that's affected you a little bit too.
And so with my personality type, I love seeing people excited. I love creating events that you get to see people come together and there's this sense of community. And whereas 2020 has been almost the opposite of... There hasn't been much to be excited about. I haven't had the ability like you to daydream and think of plan of events to make people excited. It's very much that like mourning the future, mourning the ability to, be with people and be excited. And there's been so much to be sad about. There's been so much in the news, the political whole atmosphere where there's so much unrest and we have no idea what's going on. And the whole aspect of COVID that people are actually dying.
Right.
Yeah.
There's loved ones that are actually passing away from this disease. So there is reason for people to be sad in this season.
Yeah, and a lack of input where we are social people. That's how we're made. We're made to need each other. And kind of one of the slogans, one of the key things we talk about at Broadway all the time is we are stronger together.
Right.
And we really believe that about people and how God made us, that the input we get from each other gives us a lot. And we've had a little bit less input, but we think it's still possible to have some stability and even some joy. And Lucas, as we were talking, you pointed out that there's a difference between happiness and joy.
One of the things I was thinking about is how, sure, maybe 2020 has taken away some of the things that bring me, superficial happiness, going to play sports with my friends or doing different things like that. But what brings me joy, meaningful, resounding joy in my soul is stuff that, has an eternal consequence where I can leave a legacy.
Right.
And I feel like when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, I say, I feel joy, a deep, resounding joy in my soul. It has nothing to do with, Lucas seems really happy today. Even some days after a stressful, hard day, I'm like, I feel joy right now because I feel like God used me today. And I feel like I actually had an impact on eternity today.
Yeah.
And so I think, at any point, at any time in history, even now, there's never going to be a time, there's never going to be enough obstacles to take away our ability to feel joy, because I feel like we feel joy when we are used by God, and we can always be used by God. And I keep coming back to it, but it's like, what's in front of me?
Right.
And I believe there's opportunities for me to experience real joy and maybe a little less happiness. I can't play basketball with my friends right now.
Yeah.
But I can still live a day and live a life where I lay my head on the pillow and I'm like, that was a good day.
That's exactly when we first came, and we were just talking before this whole thing. Yeah. And you were like, hey, how was today? And I was like, today felt like such a great day of ministry because everything along those lines. It was very much, it wasn't about admin today, administration. It was about doing real ministry, meeting real people, providing for people. And it was just doing that one nice thing to someone changes everything. There's that one step of making a difference in eternity, making a difference in someone's life that is different than happiness, what happens to you.
Right. Joy
is being used by God to spread it out.
And I think sometimes when we toss around words like eternity, people are like, whoa, maybe I don't have that kind of opportunity. But the thing is like the smallest things can have a massive impact on someone's eternity and someone's, it can be the start maybe of bringing some joy back into their lives. You don't even know at what point that person might be coming to you. They might be at the end of their rope. And then that little gesture, turns the tides for them. So,
Well, that's a really good point. And I think at the same time, there are people right now who are listening, and even each of us have found ourselves in a spot where you're kind of sitting at home and you're not feeling just on an emotional level inspired and feeling a little melancholy and feeling a little like, man, I'm just down. And what do we see in the Bible about that, and how does God react in those situations? What evidence do we have that gives us a bit of an idea of what God thinks about that? Lucas, what do you see in the Word?
Well, I think it's important. We're sitting here, and I think sometimes people can look at us and say, "Oh, those guys must have it all together, right? They're teaching and they're pastors." And I think, I think pastor's just a title. We're all just trying to serve God, live a meaningful life and leave a legacy that carries into eternity. And I think it's important to tell you guys right now that we struggle too. There's days where we don't feel happiness, and especially on those days, it's really where I try to dig in and experience joy, and really look for that opportunity in front of me to impact someone. How you were talking about with your day today, but I was thinking about people in the Bible who are unhappy, and I always think about this passage in 2 Corinthians, and Paul writes this, and this is about halfway through his ministry, and he lists all the things he's been through. So that halfway through, so he went through more than this. I think the word would probably be a little stronger than I'm unhappy, but I just want to read to you what he went through. So he says, I am more. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. I don't know what that is, but that sounds like about 39 lashes.
Big math guy, eh?
Huge math guy.
Crushing numbers right in front of us.
History major, but I can also do math. Yeah. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a day and a night in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of concern for all churches. Who is weak, and I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin, and I do not inwardly burn? If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. That's extreme. I read that sometimes when I'm feeling sorry for myself and I feel unhappy, and not to diminish, the things we go through,
Right.
but I think it puts it in perspective a little bit that, even in that, he's boasting in his weakness. He's confident that, God's going to carry him through that, and he's going through stuff that, man, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
And so I just think he's a good example of someone who is, probably should have been really unhappy, but his perspective, he was like, hey, this sucks,
Right.
but I do still trust God that he's going to carry me through this.
Right.
That's so good. That ties so well into what you're saying about happiness and joy, where Paul acknowledges that these things are definitely hardships. There's no debate there, but he still has a sense of purpose and still has a sense of, almost like gratitude that he's a part of God's kingdom.
Right.
And I think that's attainable for us to acknowledge that, man, things are tough, but I'm glad to be a part of this.
Right.
And a verse that stands out to me, or a story that stands out to me, is when I look at the life of Jesus, there's a few times that he felt some things other than happiness, which I think sets the precedent that those of us who are following Jesus, you're not wrong for being upset, right? We see Jesus get irritated at times. We see him get frustrated. And we have a scene or two where he's sad. And there's a scene where he goes up over the city, symbolizing like a group of people that he cares deeply about, and he weeps. He cries over them. And what I take away from that is there's things worth being sad about.
Right.
That, it's joy, happiness. I think naturally we just know that that's a good place to be. And there are things worth being sad over.
Right. Yeah, sometimes in the church we get that, we feel like we can't be sad. We feel like there has to be.
Right, like, hey, how's it going, man? And
it
we
has to
feel
be
the
good.
pressure.
Yeah, it's like, don't you know Jesus? Everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
well,
Yeah, Jesus in my heart, man. I'm ready. I'm blessed.
Yeah, it's like he's good. I'm grateful to be a part of his kingdom, and there's things worth crying over.
Right.
And that reminds me of one of my favorite Bible passages in 1 Kings 19, talking about Elijah. And he's just another one of those examples in the Bible that I find myself that I can relate to. And I feel like a lot of people in 2020 can find themselves in this verse. In chapter 19, we see in the chapter before, Elijah, if you guys know the story, he's challenged by the prophets of Baal to send down fire from heaven. And they try for days. They're trying to get this thing lit. And Elijah, man, just so tough. He just pours water all over his altar and is like, watch what's about to happen. Just check this thing out. And then fire from heaven comes out. It's like this huge, like, spiritual wind, which is confusing because the very next chapter we find Elijah here, and Jezebel, who's this queen, kills all the prophets. And so we find Elijah alone,
running,
isolated. And he's by himself, and he's sitting here under a tree, and he asks the Lord, hey, I'm ready to die. Like, you go ahead, you can take my life. I'm no better than anyone who's gone before me.
Right.
Like, and I've found myself in that situation. Like, Lord, like, man, I've seen what 2020, I'm a dreamer just like you. And I'm like, what is there even to dream about? What is there? But I love this verse where the angel of the Lord appears to him. And he has a hot meal for him. Some like super practical stuff here. Like, has a hot meal, has some hot cakes. I don't know what that is. Sounds absolutely delicious. Yeah. And
does
water.
It actually say hotcakes?
Yeah. Well, it's a cake on hot coals, so it's not a cold cake. It's a hot cake.
Some translations say a cold shrimp ring.
Showing up to the party with a cold shrimp ring. That's perfect. And he's
guy.
sitting there, and the angel's like, here's some cake, here's some water, and he has a nap. Like, very practical wisdom, like, hey, just take a rest, fill your stomach, hydrate. And then I love the end scene. He actually has 2 naps and 2 meals.
That's a great day.
It's a great day.
Sounds great. Yeah.
And it's changed his mood. He gets ready. He goes on to mentor Elijah. And it's like such practical wisdom of when we find ourselves in situations, the Bible gives us some beautiful instructions on, hey, here's some ways that will help when you're not happy.
That's cool. That's real practical advice. And we've learned so much about psychology since those words were written. And those words have been helpful to people for, thousands of years.
Right.
And now we actually know a little bit about why.
Right.
And we know a little bit about how brains work, and there's still a lot we don't know. But God made us to live in these bodies, and I love seeing the Bible address that, like some of the relationship between our physical bodies and our stomachs and our brain chemistry, and then our moods and our experience with our lives, that things aren't always strictly physical or strictly spiritual, but we're both.
Right.
We're people. Made in the image of God.
Right.
So this kind of brings us to some practical advice, and I'd love for us to each just be open as individuals. What do we do when we're not happy, to turn it around a little bit? And there's one thing I tried. I've known this for a while, but I actually relearned it pretty recently. I think it was a few weeks ago. I was just having a day where I didn't feel like myself, and I just felt down, and I didn't feel terribly motivated. And I thought, I'm going to make a list of a few things I can do that are nice for somebody else. And it just felt like something to do. So I did that. I fired off a couple of things, just some like real simple, nothing crazy, just a few acts of kindness. And it actually turned my whole day around. And then I'm kind of interested in the psychology thing, so I looked it up a little bit. And of course, it made total sense that when you check something off on a list, when you have like a small achievement, you actually release the hormone dopamine, the chemical dopamine, which makes you feel a little bit better. It's part of your brain's reward system. It makes you feel good about something. So it was like the element of the list and the element of doing something good for someone else. It actually created a sense of satisfaction that's chemically measurable and helps turn your day around. Right. And then there's a spiritual component that you were talking about earlier, of the joy and purpose of realizing that your life is eternally significant. There's a quote C.S. Lewis has that says, the present is the only place where time and eternity interact, where what you do today can be true forever outside of time. And all of a sudden, even the most melancholy, disappointing day is beautiful and full of purpose, because we have the opportunity to make a decision that is eternally true.
And what a beautiful picture, like in light of eternity, one day when we're standing with Jesus and we look back and we see all those simple things, whatever that is, the littlest things, the impact that's made throughout eternity, whether that's just buying a pastor a Twix bar who didn't have supper. It's like, man, that made a difference. You know what I mean? That's a real testimony. That real happened.
Yeah, no, and I think for me personally too, I've noticed cycles, and I've talked to a few people about this, and it seems to be relatable pretty well across the board. I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but it seems like positivity and negativity are both momentous.
Right.
You know, you start feeling down a little bit, so you don't have the energy to do something that maybe you feel like you should, and then you don't do it, and you feel guilty that you didn't, which decreases your energy to do something else. And it just becomes this like negative cycle where I feel my sense of self getting kind of lower and worse, and then my motivation and ability to change that cycle feeling lower and worse. But in the same way, when you kind of take that first step, as hard as it may be, sometimes it feels like pulling yourself up out of quicksand, to do something positive, you get a little bit of satisfaction or joy or gratitude that sparks another choice like that, and you get a little spring in your step.
The momentum starts to build.
So I think just realizing that my choices are momentous helps me make a small one, realizing that it might lead to a bigger one down the road. Lucas, what's been helpful for you when you feel down?
Well, I think for me, like for those that know me, you guys have gotten to know me a bit. I'm a worker. I love I love working here at Southside and being a part of every day, getting to do it for work, and I think that's amazing because, I have so many leaders and volunteers, as you guys do too, that, they give up their time. They're not paid. They're here all the time, serving at church and because they care that much. And it's inspiring, first of all. But I think for me, I'm high energy and I'm a worker, but I can quickly, I can kind of hit a wall. And my mom has always kind of made fun of me. Even a couple of days ago, she did too. She's like, no one wants to be around a tired, hungry Lucas. And it's really true. If I'm hungry, my blood sugar's low, or I didn't get enough sleep, or I'm physically tired, I'm no fun to be around. Right. And that's what you said, if I try to go on for too long, that's when that cycle starts to build. Yeah. And so for me, like, it's funny that I didn't know you're going to tell that story here. I need to take a nap or get a really good sleep, and I need to eat some good, healthy food.
Right.
Yeah.
And lucky for me, I have an amazing wife who can make good, healthy food because I can pretty much just make craft dinner. But honestly, it sounds simple, but it can really turn not only my day around, but really, like you said, like it can go from momentum building in a negative direction to flip it to a positive direction. So that's it for me.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Same way. Whereas what I've learned in my life, a lot of people get hangry, but when I get hungry, that's why I relate so much to Elijah. Yeah. I kind of question the universe, and I don't feel hungry.
Right.
I just start to get like, does it matter? Like
lethargic.
Lethargic. It's like, and then my wife will be like, "Hey, you're probably just hungry. Like life isn't that bad. You just, you know."
But it actually makes a lot of sense because serotonin is produced in your gut. So the food that you eat and your digestion ends up creating one of the hormones that keeps us happy. It regulates our mood and our sense of self.
Right.
So our food, our diet intake is actually directly related to how we feel.
Right. So mine would be definitely having food at the right time. But one thing I've learned to love is taking walks. Just like leaving the house. Doesn't have to be a long walk, but just that moment of clearing your head. Usually either what I'll do is put a podcast on, music, or even better is leaving my phone completely. And just have those moments of quiet. And just separating yourself from
I gotta start doing that more.
rat race of information. And which confuses there's just a whole bunch of stuff that will just confuse and overwhelm. And that walk is so simple and so practical. And we see it in the Bible. I love even how you were saying there's like, sometimes we read scriptures and they're very, very spiritual, but the Lord knew that we would need some very practical wisdom. Yeah. That's just like, take it as it is. Eat, sleep, hydrate,
move your body.
Yeah.
And moving your body releases endorphins, another chemical that our body uses to regulate our mood and give us a sense of feeling good. For
us as Christians, we need to really see the difference between escaping a situation and dealing with a situation. And when I look at the Bible, I have not seen, maybe you guys have, one example of a shortcut.
And I also think the Christmas season reminds us of something that, we might lose some of the happiness or some of the excitement, but there's actually no reason for a follower of Jesus to fall into despair.
Right.
Because we know how the story ends. I know when I'm watching a movie, sometimes there'll just be like a sad moment and it's just heartbreaking. You see what the character's going through. You're like, no, what's going to happen? And then it ends up all getting fixed by the end. And the second time you watch the movie, it's not as heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you know how it ends. And you're like, this is painful for a season, but I know what happens, so it's okay. I can endure it.
Are you talking about The Notebook?
I'm talking about The Notebook.
You better not be talking. So that happens to me in reverse with Lord of the Rings. Every single time I watch it, when Gollum almost turns for the good, and then every single time I'm like, what if this is the time that he actually, and it hurts.
That hurts. Yeah. But when we know how a story ends, there's a little bit of kind of peace.
Right.
And stability, where we can look at the sadness in a movie and actually just see the beauty in it.
Yeah.
And you see the characters reacting and you can just acknowledge it. I think that's the story of a follower of Jesus.
Come on.
And the Christmas season really is an acknowledgement of that story, because Christmas is the story of God saying, I'm not going to stand at a distance and watch what's going on. I'm going to roll my sleeves up and I'm going to experience what these people experience, and I'm going to make it so clear that I am here for them, I am here with them, and I am more powerful than every evil, dark thing in their world. Right. And when we endure these hardships, these frustrations, these pains, even boredom, right, we can remember that this is a temporary thing. Right. This is going to be a small part of a far larger story that starts at Christmas and is going to end at some point when Jesus comes back and makes everything right. We get the picture given to us that there's going to be every tear wiped away, every brokenness, every heartbreak addressed in God's presence, in perfect relationship, in a world free of injustice. So in the meantime, there are things worth crying over. Right. There is injustice, there is pain, that is real. And there is purpose, there is joy, and there is no reason to despair, because we know how this story ends. So think of that, guys, when you see Christmas lights. Amen. When you come cruise through this drive-through and you see these beautiful lights, that's the story that they're telling you.
Exactly.
Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun just hanging out with you. I am so thankful for these last 3 conversations with you guys, and I'm looking forward to 2021. and
Yeah.
what the Lord has in store for all of us as we continue to get together and have conversations about real issues and real topics that are affecting our youth and young adults. So until then, have a great Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas, boys. Thanks for
Merry
doing
Christmas.
this.
Yes, sir.
Take it easy, guys.